Thank you very much, Dr. Sampath. I'm most honored to be part of this august group of personalities to honor a great man, a great visionary, Nelson Mandela. I want to thank the Madras Development Society for inviting me, but for also bringing us together to discuss some of the legacies of the great Nelson Mandela. The timing is very good. It is coming at a time when indeed the world is facing a major crisis. It is not only the health crisis that some of us worry about, but it is the other aftershocks of the COVID earthquake. We see rise of populism and racism and hate around the world. We see the rise of protectionism. More importantly, now that I am in Parliament myself and I'm involved in a number of global parliamentary forums, I see a growing mistrust of governments by locals. And that is in fact exacerbated now by the response to COVID, whether in the United States, in African countries, or in Asian countries or elsewhere, even in Europe, we see citizens questioning how effectively their governments are dealing with this pandemic. So the pandemic is testing leadership qualities. It is testing our ability to come together as peoples, as societies, to solve a common problem. It is also opening up old ones and cleavages in society. So it is no surprise that we see demonstrations in Israel, in the UK, in the US, elsewhere, where people not only question issues within their society, but they even question how their governments are trying to handle the pandemic. We also see reports now of governments, in fact, trying to use COVID to amass more power in the executive arm, and parliaments incapable of checking that excesses of the executive arms. So yes, the timing is good to talk about someone who found himself in a situation in South Africa where similar questions were being asked about their own society. The honesty of their leadership, the discrimination, brutal discrimination of their governance systems, the inequalities that existed, and he stood up for certain values as a visionary leader to say we don't only want to make our society better, we want to make it different. And that's the key. Mandela did not only, as a visionary, did not only want to make South Africa better, he wanted to make it South Africa different. A South Africa more inclusive, more with respect for all races. And I'm very happy that in fact, it is not us Africans honoring him, but it is the Madras Development Society that is honoring him for even the way he reached out to others who were not of African race. And I hope the world learns from this, that in fact, in the post-COVID world, we're going to need leaders from various countries that can reach out to other parts. I think my colleague Navi Pele mentioned the need for multilateralism, the need for us to reach out, especially because we see today that the economic impacts of COVID-19 are in fact worsening economic conditions across the world. If we take the African context, my country, for example, a number of us did not record our first cases before March. In fact, my country recorded its first case at the end of March. But the economic impacts of COVID were already with us since January. Why? Because it affected supply chains around the world. It disrupted those supply chains. It affected remittances. People were laid off, so they couldn't send monies back home. So we already see the need for a better global situation where global governance encourages leaders to reach across boundaries, to bring people together, to help each other out, to find a common response, a common vaccine that everybody could have access to have systems in place that will also rescue economies that could potentially collapse. So the need for multilateralism is even higher today than before COVID came. So yes, it is right to celebrate a man like Mandela, whose vision went beyond the borders of South Africa. And I have two of my favorite quotes of him that I used recently in Parliament, but also giving a lecture to some university students. The first one, he said, and I quote, "We must strive to be moved by a generosity of spirit that will enable us to outgrow the hatred or conflict of the past." And many of our countries need that internally, whether in India or in the United States or elsewhere. We need that generosity of spirit to reach out to other people, especially the most vulnerable, the very poor. But we also need that generosity of spirit to reach out to across boundaries, to reach out to others, whether it is to solve climate change, or in fact, it is to make sure prosperity extends to those communities can also be viable and prosperous communities. The second quotation from Mandela that I wish to quote, and I quote, "Reconciliation does not mean forgetting or trying to bury the pain of conflict, but that reconciliation means working together to correct the legacy of past injustices," unquote. Past injustices. We all have those in our country. We all have those past injustices.
Unmute mic, please. Your mic is, please.
We can create something different, something that will address those injustices of the past. If we cover them up, we're just kicking the can down the road. There will be major conflicts in the future. And those conflicts will be made worse, not only because of COVID, but also because of climate change. So I end by talking about energy justice. I spent a good part of my life in the United Nations, almost 2 decades there, pushing for access to energy. And I did many trips to India, as Sampath and others know. We still have to address the issue of global universal access to energy. Energy underpins our societies today. We saw it in my country under COVID. If you don't have electricity in the hospitals, they cannot run. If you don't have access to energy, you can't pump clean water to wash hands in the schools, in the hospitals, in the homes. So you begin to again see the nexus of energy to many of the things we do. Energy revolution is needed to deal with the climate change problem. We still have 3 billion people, about 700 million of them in India, who do not have access to clean cooking fuels. They still use charcoal, cow dung, and biomass. That is killing so many people and creating pre-existing conditions that will make COVID worse for the poorest of the poor who rely on these dirty fuels for cooking. So I wanted to put it in context that in fact, what we should also strive for as communities of nations, whether in the UN or amongst ourselves, is how in fact we drive access to energy, clean forms of energy, that will make societies better in the future and greener, that will clean the air for our children and our grandchildren, that in fact will also ensure clean industrialization that will create jobs and economic opportunities so people can live a better life. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I look forward again. And by the way, I want to take this opportunity to say hello to my colleague, Justice Navi Pillay. Yes, we served together in the Chief Executive's Board. I was at UNIDO. You were in the commission then. It's great to see you. And I hope in the future we'll find another opportunity to collaborate. But this was great, Sampath. Thank you for bringing all of us together. And God bless you. Thank you.